They did it. Ohio State won the national championship.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans. After one of the biggest wins of our lives, Ohio State just beat Notre Dame in the national championship. We're here to break it all down for you instantly with my guys, Jeff Hunt of Jeff Nee Sports and Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Jay Stevens of the Locked On Buckeye Squad Show. And man, this run, the 12-team playoff, it ended with an Ohio State 34-23 win over Notre Dame down in Atlanta. This team was one that had different roller coasters, different rides throughout the season. But at the end of the day, Ohio State finished the gauntlet. We had one of the wildest runs we've ever seen in college football and won the national championship. Jeff, we have seen a lot of Buckeye football. We've seen a lot of Buckeye national championships. Jeff Hunt, we've never seen a championship run like this ever in the sport.
Well, yeah, I will admit there's never been one, but I will say that Ohio State tends to show up when there's a new format. Like, the more difficult they make it, twice they've showed up the first run of it and won it. It's really amazing. I mean, in all honesty, though, just as a college football fan, like, and nobody will argue with it, it's one of the greatest runs we've ever seen, just because of, the Texas game was close and still 14-point victory. This game was not as close as it, seemed. There's a lot of good things to say about Notre Dame. I know they don't want to hear it right now. A ton of good things to say about Notre Dame. But between that and the first two blowouts, none of it makes sense. I don't remember teams really didn't have a second chance to come together and erase, some mistakes like Ohio State was afforded with the 12-team playoff, and good for them for taking advantage of it. And boy, oh boy, you want to talk about guys showing up. You want to talk about a coach that learned how to coach overnight. I mean, I think we can all just unbelievable in-game. Both these in-game coaches were really good. I was worried about. And to top it off, man, it's hard to explain to a couple young guys like you, but to have your 2.5-year-old grandson call you and tell you go Bucks in his first national championship, it's just an unbelievable night here in Ohio. It's crazy. Cannot say enough good things about this team, and I apologize to all of them because I've said a lot of bad things about them.
Yeah,
you've seen a lot of football too.
I've seen my fair share. Are we still firing Ryan Day after this game? Is that what happens?
Right off into the subs. That's how he handles the pressers.
Yeah, is this his riding off into the sunset moment of, all right, you don't want me here. Bye, guys. You're welcome for that national championship, but hope you enjoy it. Sorry, I lost to Michigan.
I think there's a chance.
I was having a debate with a friend earlier tonight about whether you'd rather lose to your rival and win the national championship or not win the national title and beat your rival. Like, this is not a close. This should not be close. You guys know I'm an Oregon guy. If the one loss Oregon had all season, no matter how good or bad they were, was to Washington, but they won the national title, I would not care in the slightest. Would not care. Wouldn't care.
Can I tell you, Spencer, you're right. I can tell you without 100% without a doubt, you are correct, sir.
Yeah, it's just crazy how this all unfolded, and it's the second time that in the first year of the newly expanded playoff, Ohio State says, "Thank you very much for opening the door. We will gladly walk right through it." And I thought Josh Payton made a lot of good points about this over the last few weeks when talking about the expanded playoff and his opposition to it. Is you're not opening the door in a 12-team playoff for a Cinderella that was getting left out before. You were opening the door for this right here. So all of you that wanted it, here you go. This is what you get. This is what it does. If you think that makes college football better, great. That's the situation we have now. We know they're not going backwards. They're going to go forwards with more playoff expansion eventually. I guarantee you within the next 15 to 20 years, we will see a 24-team college football playoff because people will start pointing out, well, the FCS has a 24-team playoff. Why is it only 16 up here? Like, that's never going to end. But for Ohio State, the good news about that is you have no ability to question this run or try and cast dispersions or doubts about it. There is nothing that you can say, nothing that you can hold Michigan, you beat Ohio State. Congratulations. You didn't win a national championship. You didn't do that you did that last year. That was your moment, but Ohio State's got the moment now. But when you blast Tennessee, you beat the number 1 overall team who beat you earlier in the season in a close game, and you beat them soundly, and then you beat Texas despite making a mistake, and then you have the big lead on Notre Dame. You faced a different variety of teams. You faced high caliber teams and showed why they were the best team on paper coming into this year. And what do you know? They're the best team at the end of the year. Are we doing away with preseason polls too? Because I think Ohio State was the preseason, number 3, 4? What were they?
Somewhere around there. Somewhere top 5.
Yeah, somewhere around there. But preseason polls don't ever give us an accurate depiction of who's good, right? All right, I'm done for now.
Can I ask Spencer a question real quick?
You may.
This because, and I swear this isn't a needle. This is a real question. Like, I thought one of the huge flaws in this playoff was exactly what happened to Oregon. They got punished for being really good, and what the team behind them losing a terrible game, and then all of a sudden, they get matched up in the first game with an Ohio State. Like, there was no reward for the conference champions. I would say all that. I mean, all the teams that had a bye lost. Like, what is I know as an Oregon fan, you've had to have thought of what is the fix to reward the good teams rather than they all got punished.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of ways you can go about that. You either reseed after the first round, or do not just give the first round buys automatically to a conference champion, right? If you want to have the 5 highest ranked conference champions into the playoff, I have no objection to that, because that does provide some increased importance in those games for a Clemson to get in, or Boise State had to beat UNLV to get it. Like, I have no problem with that, because I'm a regular season purist kind of guy, and I've always viewed conference championship games as an extension of the regular season. So if you want to do that, that's fine. But when you look at the field, the point was, hey, we want to maximize the importance of these conference championship games, and yet I don't think there's a single Oregon fan out there, myself included, and I've reversed my take on it, knowing what I know now. There's not a single Oregon fan who I think would say, yeah, I'm glad we won the Big Ten championship game. Like, should have lost.
I totally
take
agree.
the home game against SMU or Clemson or whoever. You would have had a shorter layoff, and then you'd be playing a home game first. If Ohio State couldn't go into Autzen Stadium and win, I don't think anybody else would have. And then at the very least, you're into the quarterfinal, but you haven't been sitting around for a few weeks. And I think that is the unfortunate part of the whole format here. But again, I'm just not surprised by any of this. When they said, oh, we're going to expand the playoff, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure you guys will get it right, because you've gotten everything else right my entire life. But again, for Ohio State, this is not me trying to take away from what they did, because they were really impressive. Frankly, I don't know. Even if Oregon loses the Big Ten championship game, wins 3 playoff games, and is in the spot where Notre Dame is, I don't know that they're beating Ohio State there either. Like, Oregon was an incredibly good, really talented team, lest we forget they won the Big Ten and did not lose a game until the Rose Bowl. They were really, really good. And I still think when Ohio State was at their best, they were better. They were just better across the board. So yes, the format needs to be fixed, but the first concern for Oregon fans after this is, Oregon's got to be better in those spots. Arizona State got down early. They were able to make a comeback, and Oregon was not.
Now, I'm glad you actually talked about the situation where Oregon wasn't better in certain situations. Arizona State came back, because in this game tonight, Notre Dame fought back. They kept fighting. And we all knew that at some point, Notre Dame might find a way to claw back. Ohio State allowed them to. Ohio State made some mistakes on defense. There were some issues offensively where they weren't scoring as consistently as you would like to later in the game. And they still had enough at the end of the day to get the job done. We saw it against Texas, where we talked about it last week, guys. They had numerous drives where they made boneheaded decision after boneheaded decision. It seemed like tonight IGB went back to the old IGB, where he's just holding and he has stickum on his hands and he's attached to the closest jersey, which is a Notre Dame guy. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, what are you doing? The one thing you don't want to do is get a penalty, a holding penalty or pass interference. Yeah. You let them stay in the game. but Ohio State still had a gear that Notre Dame didn't stop. The fact that Jeremiah Smith only had one catch in the second half and Ohio State won
Pretty
by
big catch.
11,
Oh, I was gonna say, wait.
huge catch.
The fact that
huge
Jeremiah Smith only had the biggest catch in I'll say biggest reception in Ohio State football history. You're right. Maybe outside of the wide receiver throwback against Alabama. That's probably the biggest touchdown
I'm
ever.
I'm saving that for later because I got a comment about that very throw, Jeff. But Ohio State had a gear that when Texas couldn't.
Ohio State was
Notre Dame
better
couldn't
than
get
Notre
past
Dame.
it.
Ohio State was better.
Spencer
than Notre
tweeted
Dame.
it out. Ohio State was better, but Ohio State's gear that they had this year is what Oregon's trying to get next year. It's what Texas is trying to get. These top teams are trying to get the gear that Ohio State has that no one else has, and it showed up tonight.
And let me give credit to Ohio State, and this is what that gear was, and it's not more complicated than this. They had a bunch of guys that stayed. That's it.
Yes.
If Oregon or Texas or whoever, all their players stay for a fourth year, they're going to look exactly the same. That was what the gear was. The gear was when Jack Sawyer and JTT and all these guys decided to stay. That's the gear. It's physicality, it's mental toughness, it's being through what they've been through. This game tonight could not happen without the Georgia game a couple years ago. Like none of this could happen. These guys have been drugged through it. And I mean, at some point, I know we're going to get to the Will Howard discussion, how he played. And I really believe played one of the great college football championship games of all time, as far as decision-making. And I mean, the throw, I mean, it's the confidence of the coach, the play calling. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Chip Kelly, I thought, called a really good game. I know he got tight towards the end, but when it was time to call it, it was called, and it was, executed. And I mean, let's be fair about this Ohio State team. They scored on almost every drive they had. You can't really play.
They punted once.
You can't really play offense much better than they did. There's one fumble. And
if they don't fumble, they're going to score again.
If Ibuka doesn't fumble, like that's not even a conversation, but he did. And thank goodness for that kid who put his heart and soul into this team. We love him. So many of these guys are, everybody can laugh or whatever, but I'm the Ohio guy. These guys are legendary, like Buckeyes, in our heart forever, stamped. This is a really special team. What's funny is the 14 team was the youngsters. That was a sophomore team. That was a sophomore-driven team. Came out of nowhere, had all this talent, had the greatest.
Thanks. That makes me feel great.
One of the biggest.
I didn't know that. I could have gone my entire life and died not knowing that. It would have been fine.
Was that 42-20?
Zeke
that was
42-20.
The game was closer than that, but yeah.
All the guys came back were just juniors, and then they left and had that draft class that set the record for draft class and all that. This team was the opposite. These are a bunch of guys who we were disappointed in. Here's the thing about this team. They don't have a Big Ten championship, and they don't have a Michigan victory, and they've got the greatest national championship on record. It's the weirdest thing that has ever happened. I mean, I told Jay before the show, Spencer, Ohio State basically wiped out 4 years of what we're going to just say disappointment.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good way to do it,
I can't, there's no way to describe the euphoria.
What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, the first it's got to be different than winning the first one, though. Like the first national championship you ever saw for Ohio State. That one hits differently, right?
02 was pretty awesome.
02, that was there's a play in that one I'm going to tie into later on.
And they're all three different.
I remember 02. Pre-K was wild, man.
BCS, then 14 playoff, then 12 team. All three different national championships. It's just.
Plus, there were a bunch under Woody Hayes when they just named national champions.
I was getting ready to say when everybody got one.
Yeah, so all four. Okay, well, not everybody again, but I think for Ohio State, like there, was some discussion flying around online about how much money they spend on the roster and living out and doing all this sort of stuff, but just because you have all of that talent does not mean that you're automatically just going to win. You know who has the biggest athletic department budget of anybody in the country every year for the last, I think, 10 to 15 years? Texas. Mm-hmm. Texas spends more money on athletics or has more revenue or is at least in the top 5 every single year. It doesn't guarantee any of that. And so if anyone out there wants to write off the coaching job that Ryan Day just did and Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles as, well, they just have more talent. Well, they have a lot of talent. That's incredibly clear. These guys are so well coached. So well coached. What was the biggest thing that got in Ohio State's way in this game and in the Texas game? The penalties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was so mind-numbingly annoying, I assume, for Ohio State fans, because that's not something that they did very often. They were, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, one of the least penalized teams in all of college football this year. And throughout the playoff, that's the only thing that got in their way. Like this team was able to maximize its talent in a way that past all-time rosters haven't, that Texas A&M was never able to, despite recruiting at this same sort of level. Like this is what happens when you blend high-end roster acquisition and recruiting with high-end coaching. That's what it looks like. They're just better. And the only way other teams were able to beat them was, for the most part, Ohio State getting in their own way. I think Oregon just beat them in Eugene, but Michigan or Texas, the Texas game being close was all about the Ohio State mistakes. It was all about that. And in this game, Ohio State gets up, and then all of a sudden, you've got a fumble. It's a great play by the defender, but that's a veteran receiver who should probably know, I don't need an extra 2 yards. I can just go down right here in this spot. And then Notre Dame started moving the ball. What happened? Up, couple penalties here and there to extend the drive, leads to a touchdown. That was the only way anyone really hung around with them in the playoff. They were well coached, well prepared, and incredibly talented.
Yeah, it was a great run.
One second, Jeff. One thing I want to touch on after the break is Will Howard. Jeff hit on him earlier, and I think his performance tonight needs to be praised because he was wheeling and dealing all night long. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keep every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank y'all for tapping into this Locked on Buckeye Squad show after Ohio State's national championship win over Notre Dame. The final score 34-23. Spencer, we're going to start with you on this one because we get a lot of – Jeff and I talk about Will Howard quite a bit. I'm curious to hear how you view his performance tonight. I know that I think he completed his first 12 passes, and I think he had 15 in a row going back to the Texas game. What were your thoughts about how Will Howard played tonight?
Man, he looked like the best version of himself. They didn't have all the downfield shots until the end of the game that they had against Oregon in the Rose Bowl, but 17 of 21, 231, and 2 touchdowns when your team runs for over 200 yards. I mean, that's a phenomenal offensive game. The game has passed Chip Kelly by guys? Where's the crowd? Where's the Fire Ryan Day crowd? I would like to have a conversation with some of them just to check in and see how things are going. But I mean, Howard looks so dialed in from the moment these playoffs began. The first rainbow deep shot against Tennessee to go up 7-0. I watched that throw and thought, man, I haven't seen that guy very often this year. Where's he? And then he kept doing it. And then he came out against Oregon, and it was up, easy screen pass, up, dart on a deep seam shot, up, deep ball, up. He just showed everything. I think he made himself a lot of fans in Columbus, if he didn't have a bunch already. I think he made himself a bunch of money as well in the NFL, because is he going to be a first-round pick? No, he doesn't have the most incredible arm, but tell me why he can't be a backup quarterback in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Veteran guy, won a national championship. I don't see how a team doesn't pick him up and say, you sit there and we'll let you know if our quarterback gets dinged up or something, because he just looked like he was confident, poised, composed, the entire time, knew where to go with the football. And can we shout out the Buckeyes offensive line? Holy smokes.
Man.
So good. Over 200 rushing yards against a really good Notre Dame defense. Howard was sacked all of, I believe, just the one to, no, he was sacked twice.
Okay.
And Burnham got him a couple times, but having the time to throw when Notre Dame went with the Arizona State approach, more than 10 yards to go, they say, let's go cover zero. Will Howard sees it. Offensive line picks it up. He has just enough time. And Jeremiah Smith is, of course, going to get wide open. So, yeah, I was really impressed with Will Howard, and he does deserve some credit for how the offensive line played. I don't think people always understand or really think about that. Yeah. You as a quarterback have to be able to get your offensive line into the correct protections. You have to be able to identify what the defense is doing. You have to make the right checks into a run play or out of a run. And he just had the offense exactly where it needed to be. He was doing exactly what Chip Kelly was asking him to do. And he also just did a great job of taking what was there. Did he put the ball in harm's way once today? I can't think of it. I can't think of a moment.
The Henderson route, they went for it there on the
Even then, I wouldn't consider that a dangerous throw. That's
that was the right play.
Yeah, like I'm going to give my guy an opportunity to go make a phenomenal play, and Xavier Watts made a better one, but it wasn't intercepted. It was just incomplete.
Yeah. And another thing, Tate, that throw to Tate, I think Howard made the right throw. I think Tate got too far inside on that route in the end zone, because I really think that Howard put that in the exact right spot. I think if that's Jeremiah Smith, it's a touchdown. I understand, Tate, you're just not quite as good as Jeremiah Smith, but I think that was thrown for a different receiver, because that was an awesome ball, and Tate just kind of got a little off on. Those two just haven't really.
And here's the other thing I'll say to put a final feather in Will Howard's cap for this game. Ohio State on third down. What do you think they were, guys?
Good.
I don't even think of the number.
Why don't you go ahead and give me some guesses here?
70%?
Well, okay, 70%. Okay.
10 for 12.
Jeff, one off, my man. They were 9 for 12. 9 for 12 on third down. And
I think they got that fourth down. I mean, I'm being serious. Like, I think they still got the first down on the one of the ones they missed.
No, they didn't go for it on fourth down.
Oh, I thought they did. I'm sorry. I thought they had. They never had to go for it on fourth down and won a national championship.
But the efficiency from Howard, from the offense on third down, you got to give a lot of credit to the quarterback there.
Yeah,
Jeff, that's one thing I've been saying about Will Howard all year, and we've talked about it numerous times on the show. It's just Will Howard's efficiency. And Spencer, that's a great word to use, because he's been efficient. A guy that came in, and I'm not trying to use all the preseason narratives like at the end of the season, but it fits Will Howard because he wasn't efficient at Kansas State. He wasn't a thrower like this at Kansas State. He changed his mechanics at Ohio State because Ryan Day said in the preseason, you can't do that here. These guys are too fast. They're too good. You're going to throw a lot of bad throws if your mechanics are like this. He changed. He was coachable. He fell in love with what it means to be a Buckeye and learned everything he needed to learn to fall in love with Ohio State, and the fan base loves him. But his efficiency is the biggest thing I'm going to remember about Will Howard as an Ohio State Buckeye, because, Jeff, from game one until the end, he was efficient. And that's exactly what he got tonight. In the biggest game of the year, his last game ever in college football, he showed the country, I am efficient, and I know how to run this offense.
No, it was unbelievable. And when you say that, Jay, it really means something. It is incredible. This guy feels like he's played at Ohio State for 4 years.
Yeah,
it just the way he melded into the program, and again, we were happy to get Howard because of coming off the McCord year. Honestly, like, we knew we needed a change. We knew we needed something to get us over the hump. We didn't know it was going to be Will Howard. I mean, we were excited. You watch we didn't even get the Kansas State Will Howard. Like, somehow Ryan Day made him slower. The guy, you know what I mean? Like, he's a completely different quarterback.
There was one run where he looked fast today.
Yeah.
There was one. I don't remember exactly which one it was.
If he takes off on the one where the guy got his ankle, there's 30 yards. But that being said, again, played a great game with his arm. But the way he just became like one of our guys and understood it, and it didn't sound like BS. We'll talk about another guy here in a little bit. If I have anything to say about it, is Quinshon Judkins. Same thing. Understanding the assignment, coming in and doing. But as far as Will Howard goes, like the faith that Day had in him. He was able to do the tough stuff at the end. Just put his head down and barrel into the line of scrimmage and get those yards. He probably left some rushing yards on the, in the closet this season, but he didn't need them. Like, it all worked out. He didn't have to become that double two-threat guy, but just the way he controlled the team, the way they responded to him, the way he interacts with even the media in Columbus, who are ridiculous, like me and Jay are sometimes, like all of these things, like really just became a true quarterback of Ohio State. And it's crazy to think that Will Howard has 4 playoff wins. Like, Justin Fields has 1, CJ Stroud has 0. We're talking about NFL quarterbacks, and Will Howard's got 4 playoff wins. I know he got them all in the same year, but a win's a win in the playoffs. Just unbelievable. Can't say enough, about the guy. And then even the little stuff, like couldn't get on the podium. That stuff's awesome.
Yeah,
that stuff is what makes Will Howard. It's crazy. There's some aspects of his type of quarterback that honestly Ohio State fans really didn't even want. We haven't had a quarterback that I'll just say looked like Will Howard for a while, and we were all a little skeptical. Proved us all wrong. You know what I mean? Showed up. It's one of the dudes. Apparently, for a team to do this for a quarterback and for him to do what he did with that offensive line, I'm so glad Spencer talked about that, because I preach that so often when just to piggyback on that, it's always something I say. Caleb Williams is a great example. They're always like, oh, offensive line's terrible. I'm like, it's not always just the offensive line. Like, there's a lot more to the 5 guys plus the 1 behind them. So, Spencer, obviously smarter than me, got to it. So, Will Howard's a legend. Played a terrific game. I thought the touchdown pass to Judkins was one of the coolest plays that we've ever seen, like Ohio State fans, have ever seen. Like, that was neat. Of course, the throw to Jeremiah, the throws he made, but really it goes back to, I totally agree with Spencer. Like, the throws he made it versus Tennessee, that's when I was like, oh, because the air was not warm that night. That was not an easy night to play football. And he made a couple throws, and I'm like, oh, okay. So we might have a chance here. And I mean, now here where we're at now. I don't know. I don't know what to say, guys. It's complete euphoria here. I feel like I've been injected with something.
I'd like to inject some snarkiness because I can. I would just like to pose a question to the Stars Don't Matter crowd out there. I would just like to
have at it.
I would just like to give you some data points here. Will Howard, in 4 years at Kansas State, he didn't start all of these games. He completed 59% of his passes. I'm rounding up because it's 58.8. He averaged 170 passing yards per game. He totaled 48 touchdowns to 25 interceptions. And his average yards gained per pass attempt was 7.4. In one season at Ohio State, not counting the national title, where I'll remind you, he went 17 of 21 for 231 and 2 touchdowns, ran for 57 yards on a team-high 16 carries. He completed 72.5% of his passes. He went for almost 3,800 yards. He threw 33 touchdowns, 9.4 yards per attempt, and 251.9 yards per game. We'll round that up to 252. So he went 52 more passing yards on average per game, 2 yards per attempt higher. He threw 33 touchdowns after 2 seasons of starting, in which he threw 39 at Kansas State. Where is my Stars Don't Matter crowd? Where are they at? What are you saying right now? What are you thinking? What is your reaction to Will Howard blossoming into a guy like this? How do you explain this? Please. Spencer, someone out there in the comment section, please.
I want Spencer to say, I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. It thinks that Ohio State's players don't matter. I'm with you.
I would love to hear the answer. Someone needs to ask the tough question.
Yeah, it really was that too. Like you say, here's the thing. Ohio State brought in Will Howard, Caleb Downs, Quinshon Judkins in one season, and they all played great tonight. It's not overcomplicated. I'm not apologizing for it. That's just, it is what it is. It's that type of program that's how they're going to do it, and that's probably how it's going to be done until things change, if they ever do.
There's one guy we haven't really touched on a lot tonight. His name is Ryan Day. And I'm curious to hear Spencer and Jeff's thoughts about what tonight's win means for Ryan Day's legacy in Columbus. We'll dive into that next. This is a message brought to you by our friends Prize Picks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now, it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right. 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Run your game. Thank y'all for tapping into this live postcast, Locked on Buckeye Squad Show, after Ohio State's national championship win over Notre Dame. Jeff, you and I have been very, very critical of Ryan Day. Critical this year, or last year. See, like every time we do a show, we find our way to be critical. Jeff, I'm going to be the guy to get this off my chest. I can't criticize Ryan Day tonight. I cannot. Jim Tressel did not go through a run like this. Urban Meyer didn't go through a run like this. No coach in college football history has ever done what he did. Even the miraculous turnaround after that Michigan loss, there are a lot of really good coaches that would not be able to put this turnaround like he got in the past 4 games. Ryan Day is silencing the critics as we speak, because those that want to be critical of Ryan Day because they didn't beat Michigan, which, trust me, that's a bad loss. He won the national championship, and he righted the ship, and he figured out how to get things right at the right time. And at the end of the day, he's lifting up a trophy while Michigan was at home. Those players were at home. The coaches weren't there. They weren't able to play in the game, and Ohio State was. And, Jeff, I have been critical of Ryan Day. You can't beat tonight. He got the job.
And let's also, and it's another thing to keep in mind that coming into the season, we were all aware of this. Like Ryan Day was completely aware of it was national championship or complete failure. That's not an easy way to coach, and he found a way to do it. The one thing I've given Ryan Day credit about, and I turned out to be correct on this one, just luckily, was that he knew how to coach an NFL season. It wasn't always. Yes. I've always said he's an NFL coach. I've said that from day one. I still believe that. I still believe but with a 12-team playoff, guess what you needed? You need an NFL-type coach. You had to not get so hung up in – he got hung up in the Michigan game of trying to, out-tough Michigan and all these things. And that was a huge mistake. We've talked about that. But then when it was playoff time, he knew, like, how to get ready for a game in college football, like a big game. Usually a big game is like either coming off a summer or you got a month. We're talking, you got to play Tennessee, and then you immediately have to get ready for Oregon, immediately have to get ready for Texas, but you don't know who you're playing next. So to be ready for these teams are very different also. Like Oregon and Notre Dame aren't the same type of team. So to be prepared for both is coaching. For him to let his staff coach like he did, that's also part of being a head coach, in all these things. So couldn't be more impressed with Ryan Day. I'm not going to say anything bad about Ryan Day tonight. I'm just gonna mute to take a call real quick, but
Spencer,
okay. Well, are
you a critic tonight?
That's new. I haven't been a critic unless it's absolutely warranted. The Michigan loss, completely warranted. But the Oregon game back on October 12th, if you were coming out of that game thinking Ryan Day's a bum, Ryan Day can't win the big one, Ryan Day chokes in big games, Ryan Day is the Michael Jordan of James Franklin's, which is still a hilarious tweet, but we have to retire that tweet now. You can't have that floating around when the guy just won 4 straight games against really good teams to win a national championship. You just can't do that. So I think this is, again, an opportunity for me to be a little bit snarky to the crowd out there who have been in the camp for a long time. Ryan Day will never win the big one. Ryan Day chokes in big games. Ryan Day this, and Ryan Day can't do that. And Ryan Day, you know what? they said the same thing about Jim Harbaugh all the time. He can't do this. He'll never beat Ohio State. He's not going to win a national championship. He won't win the Big Ten. He won't do all of these things. It turns out that the coaches that are giving themselves chances year after year after year are the ones who ultimately break through. Marcus Freeman was a great story. I thought he was the best head coach in the playoff, unquestionably, over the entire course of the playoff. Not necessarily the season, but he also had a pretty darn good season too, outside of the Northern Illinois game, which is inexplicably bad. But Dan Lanning almost lost to Idaho on his home field. Like, yeah, college football is wild and crazy sometimes, but it's almost always the coaches that keep knocking at the door over and over. Jim Harbaugh was hired at Michigan in 2015. Kirby was hired to Georgia in either 2015 or 16. Dabo was hired to Clemson in 2009. And it turns out you have to have the right ingredients. You have to have the right season. The stars have to align in a lot of different ways. You got to have the roster. You got to have the staff. You got to have the momentum. You got to get scheduling breaks. You got to do all of these things and have it line up to win a national title. I mean, LSU was the best team, is the best college football team I have ever seen. The best one. I don't think that there is one. I know people throw 2001 Miami at me. That's fine. Offense tends to beat defense when it's on the perimeter. Not up front, but on the perimeter. Like wide receiver beats corner more often than not. So I'll take 2019 LSU. They haven't been able to come close to doing that since, but everything aligned right there. And it's not that LSU or Ohio State or Oregon or Bam or anyone else like that is necessarily a window program, but you have better opportunities within a prolonged championship window. And your goal as a head coach, big picture speaking, is to give yourself the most opportunities you can so that you can find that one season where it all breaks through. I'd bet a lot of money right now Ohio State won't win the national championship next year. You know why? A lot of guys are going to be replaced. It's going to be hard. Ohio State should expect to be a playoff team next year. Yeah, that's not the sort of drop-off we're talking about. This isn't TCU or Washington from last year. This is Ohio State we're talking about. But can you expect that they have the same level team next year? No, but maybe the year after. But you just keep going. Keep giving yourself those shots, and eventually you have to trust, given the previous data and evidence to suggest they've come close, they've been right there, this guy's going to be able to break through. And Ryan Day was able to do that. A lot of people looked at, the Clemson game where it came down to Justin Fields and a wide receiver not being on the same page, or maybe they go in, well, they would have played LSU, so maybe not. Yeah. But like they had a great season and they get to the national championship game. They beat Clemson that year in the semifinal, right? And then lose to a great Alabama team that, they were just better, but they kept at it. And so a lot of people look at those opportunities and they say, oh, see, you can't win the big. Oh, see, you can't do this. I looked at those and said, so early in his tenure, he's already at that level. He's already that close. He's a 50-yard field goal, which is not a kick that should be made, but I've seen it happen before. He's a 50-yard field goal away from probably winning a national championship a couple of years ago. But your take is that he can't get there just because he hasn't yet? He's been that close to it. He's kept the program going, recruiting at a high level, winning a bunch of games, getting to the playoff, coming close to a national championship. And because he hasn't gotten there yet, your take has been, oh, he can't do it. Like, it was always ridiculous. And so I'm not surprised at all to see Ohio State get to this point.
Jeff? Yeah, one thing about Ryan Day, real quick, that was one of the problems as far as that he's erased it. And me and Jay talked about it every year, was that they would have issues throughout the season that should have been addressed in the offseason. And this year wasn't like that, mainly because of talent and Jim Knowles' defense finally taking off, but mainly because of talent in the right place. But every year it was if their defense was bad in October, we're like, you had all summer to know that it was bad. That was always our issue. He didn't do that this year. Like this team all year didn't disappoint. I mean, the Michigan game really, it just is what it is. It is just like you said with Northern Illinois, man, things happen. But this team really wasn't disappointed. Outside of Nebraska, it was probably, not a great effort. So he answered a lot of the questions throughout the season. And then of course, put the stamp on it and told everybody, from point A to point B. But here's the other thing I will say, and I know that I take a lot of flack for how us crazy Buckeye fans act and treat Ryan Day and all these things. But the one thing I will say is, though, he also knows how much we appreciate this. This is not like we give it back. It's tough love. When you're at these giant programs, it just is what it is. I mean, was he treated fairly? No, but is he going to be treated awesome now? He sure is, forever, really, until at least next season.
One thing I think it kind of gets glossed over with Ryan Day is how he's been able to sustain a level of success that most coaches in college football can't even get to. The fact that we're talking about a 2019 team, first year as a coach. Yes, those weren't all his recruits. Urban Meyer left him a lot of great players. He got to the playoff. 2020 got to the Natty. 2021 was that the Georgia? No, 2021 was a Rose Bowl. So you missed the playoffs. You go to the Rose Bowl. You win that one. You have a player that sets a record in a bowl game record in that one. 2022, you get to the playoff. Last year, I want to forget the Cotton Bowl, and then you're right back here in the playoff again. And I think in this year, if the committee was if it was a 14 playoff, the committee ranks things differently, and there's a possibility, a good chance Ohio State would be a top 4 team if there was a 14 playoff. I know there was 6. I think the committee ranks things differently if it's a 4 team, not a 12 team, because they put so much emphasis on the runner-up in the conference championship game,
right?
That they normally don't do.
But 10-2 over 11-2. I don't think Texas or Penn State gets punished for making a conference championship
Ohio
game.
State. My thing with Penn State is everybody knows Ohio State's better. I know you made your conference championship. I know.
In which case they probably get left out. What I suspect is the Big Ten would have had Oregon in and probably no one else, because Penn State at 11-2 is, just by numbers, a half game record wise better than Ohio State. Mm-hmm. But what is the value of going to Happy Valley and winning that game? I think that would take them out of that conversation. That's the first component. The second component, Indiana at 11-1, no way they have the brand power to get into the playoff there just because they have a better record. Because again, they're one game better in Ohio State, but Ohio State beat them convincingly by 23 points. I think if this had been a 14 playoff, and then the ACC would have been looked at as completely inferior, and so SMU wouldn't have been in there. I think SMU would have been playing for their playoff lives against Clemson. Mm-hmm. They lose that game, and I think the 4 teams that would have gotten in were Oregon, Texas, Georgia, and I bet they would have put in Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's where they would have got. In spite of Notre Dame's horrific loss, Ohio State had not equally as bad of a loss, but pretty darn terrible there. Bad. So I think that would have been your 4-team playoff. And I think because of the Northern Illinois game, do they want to put 2 SEC teams up against each other? Probably not. So they probably would have done Georgia as the 2 seed, Notre Dame as the 3, and Texas is the 4, and had Oregon, Texas, and then Georgia and Notre Dame. And we know what happens Georgia, Notre Dame. So Notre Dame makes the national championship either way, playing the winner of Oregon and Texas.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I totally agree. And
by the way, I would have had my Oregon fandom aside, I would have had no problem with that, with the way they arrive at those conclusions, because I mean, Indiana probably should have, in that conversation, gotten there. But since everybody wanted to see the game, we'll give them a chance. Well, they played the game. They weren't as good as Notre Dame. No. And so they would have gotten in. But
no, we won't talk about Notre Dame a lot. But, man, I was impressed with them tonight.
Riley Leonard had his best game passing of the year, given the situation and who they were going up against. I mean, you're down, was it 31-7?
At one point,
Ohio State, Ohio State knows you're throwing the ball. That secondary is nasty. You have been a mostly inept passing attack all season long. My favorite stat that I got on my own, this is why I'm so proud of it, coming into this game, is Notre Dame was attempting to be the first team to win the national championship, averaging fewer than 200 passing yards a game since 2009 Alabama.
Wow.
They did not throw the ball. It wasn't what they wanted to do. The fact that Notre Dame, I didn't think they would get to 17 points.
No.
Joel Klatt had the same prediction. I predicted them to get 13. I'm pretty amazed they got to 23 because they ran for 53 yards. And how many of those were on the opening drive? A lot.
Yeah.
A lot of them were on the opening drive. But they just found a way. And that's what they'd been doing the entire playoff and why I picked them to win all 3 of their games. They were at home first. I did not trust Georgia, and then I didn't trust Penn State in a big spot, and I thought Notre Dame was better situationally, and they were in every single one of those games. And Ohio State with, I don't know, a multi-million-dollar field goal there at the end of the game. But I thought Ohio State would win and cover because finding a way doesn't always look the same, and just kind of jimmying your way through to win games, it was awesome. And I think could have worked against everyone. But I thought this Ohio State team was too talented to do that against. But Riley Leonard was phenomenal in this game. He was slow out of the gate. He missed a couple of drag routes where he threw uncompetitive passes that he missed by 3 to 5 yards. And I thought, that's one of the big differences in this game. Riley Leonard's missing that throw. Will Howard is not missing a single one of those, and he is hitting tougher ones as well. But then Riley Leonard started hitting some throws, and you got to give him a lot of credit for that because they were not given to him by Ohio State. He made some tight window, under pressure, in the pocket throws all night long.
And ran, and they used him as a battering ram all night.
Yeah.
And he held
He was
up.
their leading rusher in both yards
I-
and carries. Do you know he had 17 carries? Do you know how many combined carries the running backs had?
Probably 13.
Jay?
11.
8.
That's
8.
ridiculous.
8. I'm presuming that Jordan Faison is a running back. Oh no, he's a wide receiver. So they're sorry, I don't have everyone's number and position memorized off the top of my head for Notre Dame. But Price and Love combined for 7 carries in this game, and then they gave 1 to a wide receiver. They could not run the football, and if they had, this is probably a different game. And it's the number one thing I felt Notre Dame needed to do going into this national championship was you've got to be able to run the ball, or you're not going to be able to score enough points. And they scored more than I thought, but guess what? It still was not enough because they just are going up against a defense that's really good.
That, and I mean, honestly, just as simple as Jeremiah Smith, like early in the game when he fights for that first down, those plays are so ginormous. I'm sure I don't listen to the broadcast, but I'm sure Herb Street told us exactly what a big play it was. But just like fighting for that extra yard and getting those first downs or little things like that, because you're just a better athlete than, on the field. Like if, I couldn't have been more. I mean, seriously, I could not have been more impressed with Notre Dame. And all night long, I started getting texts at halftime, which is insane. If anybody can hear me out there, do not text if your team is up at halftime like it's over. I was like, good friends of mine. I'm like, I'm going to strangle you the next time we speak. But the difference was, I kept telling everybody, I'm like, Notre Dame will stick with their game plan.
Yeah, they will.
They will not worry about the clock, and they will stick with it. Now, did it come back to bite them? A tad bit. They needed a little more time. But at the end of the game, I'm like, they'll stick with it. They'll still take 4 minutes to score, 5 minutes to score, as long as they get to score. And they did it. They played a great game. They just played a team that was just better. Like it's not. Sometimes that happens.
One thing we're going to do after the break is discuss Jack Sawyer's strip 6, scoop and score, whatever you want to call it, from the Texas game, and kind of see where that stacks up against other massive plays that the Buckeyes have made in the playoffs or in the BCS era. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans are unmatched. I remember the thrill of seeing my favorite team clinch a playoff win live. It's a memory I'll never forget. This year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, being there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets lowest price guaranteed. As our Locked on Buckeye Squad show rolls on after Ohio State's 34-23 win over Notre Dame in the national championship, I've been thinking about Jack Sawyer's scoop and score for quite a long time, honestly, probably every single day since that Texas game. I've been thinking about how massive that was. And, Jeff, you mentioned Evan Spencer to Michael Thomas earlier in the show against Alabama, that massive throw that kind of wowed everybody and like, oh, you pulled it off here in this moment, and it actually worked. And it made me kind of put that Jack Sawyer touchdown with that throw from Spencer to Thomas to Zeke's 85 yards down the heart of the South to Maurice Clarett stripping, was it Clinton Portis in 02 or the 03 Fiesta Bowl?
No, Sean Taylor.
Sean Taylor, excuse me. They're not two offensive players are not on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
Silly me. But where does that stack up when you think about those plays together? Where does Jack Sawyer's scoop and score stack up against those other plays?
It's right up there. Maurice Clarett, getting the ball back, absolutely won that game. Like that game would have been over. They were walking a tightrope with that great Miami team anyway. Needed every possible thing to go their way. If he doesn't take that ball back, the game's over. Like there's no question, because Ohio State did not. So that's number one. That's my number one all time. Like, wow, we needed that. The Sawyer scoop. I mean, I don't know if it's number. I think Zeke's run, just because of the circumstances in Alabama and everything, getting past that 06 game that had left such a bad taste in everybody's mouth. I think that's probably 2. And I probably put Sawyer's at 3 as far as clinching a berth in the national title game with one play. Was pretty awesome. And then I put that I'll say the Will Howard throw, because Smith, what he did is what Smith does.
Yeah.
The Will Howard throw to, essentially clinch that game. I know it wasn't over in that situation. It's one of the greatest plays that I'll ever see in my entire life. So thank you for bringing that up, though. And I'm talking about those plays. I'm sure Spencer's probably got like a whole top 10. I'm sure he's got more.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so many to choose from, just so many influential moments.
Targeting on Mariota.
You said it all. You said it all, Jeff. You really did.
I didn't mean to take your list.
Yeah, I mean, you really went down and just robbed me of. I was definitely not looking at Twitter while you were doing that segment. I definitely was not. That was not something that was happening. But I mean, Zeke's clincher against Oregon's got to be up there, right?
Yeah.
But again, that game was already in hand, and that was just kind of like icing on the cake. Whereas Jack Sawyer, it was like, oh, if this play doesn't go right, Ohio State can literally lose the football game.
Yeah.
But instead, here we are. So, amazing stuff there. Jay, next topic.
I'm going to give you a job, actually, because you did this the last time on the show. And I'm going to give you the chance to go to FanDuel and look up the odds for next year's national championship favorites. I'm going to give you that freedom once again while Jeff and I talk for a couple minutes.
Okay.
Jeff,
why do you think it's going to take me a couple minutes? How bad at technology do you think I am?
You could be 85 years old when it comes to technology.
Okay. I mean,
I somehow doubt that.
That's like, oh no, I'm actually really bad.
I think
not even kidding. It's ironic
I
because
just imagine Spencer just having several screens, kind of look like a NORAD or something in the background with FanDuel on one, all the Locked On shows on one, highlights of Marcus Mariota on another one, like all this stuff at the same time. That's how I picture it.
March Madness goes hard wherever I am. Let's just say March Madness goes very hard. I do have the odds if you want to just dive right into it, Jay.
Do they have the Heisman odds up? I don't know if they would even
have Heisman odds. Oh,
let's do the national championship first. I'm giving you the freedom. Do the Natty first, and then do the Heisman favorite second.
Who do you think? Which conference do you think has the most teams in the top 5 of national title odds?
I don't.
5.
I'll give you a hint. There are 3 of these teams from one conference.
It can't be the Big Ten because Drew Aller, they don't put that much stock in Drew Aller to have Penn State that high.
So, Jay, your official guess is what then?
The SEC.
Jeff?
I'm saying Big Ten.
It is indeed the Big Ten Conference.
There's no way.
Ohio State is the favorite. Texas is second. Oregon is third, which I would tell you is too high. Georgia is fourth. That's solid value. Penn State is number 5 right now.
That says a lot about the quarterbacks in college football if they put that much faith in Drew Aller.
I mean, they were just in the national semifinal.
Fair.
So it's perhaps a reflection of the season they just had because they're trying to, get people to go out and place wagers on these teams. But 3 of the top 5 being there. Notre Dame is 6, Bama 7, Tennessee 8, Clemson 9, LSU 10. The Heisman, though, I will tell you, the favorite right now is not the player that you would think.
So it's not Arch Manning.
It is not Arch Manning.
Give me Jeremiah Smith. That's
not,
easy.
It is not Jeremiah Smith. It is a quarterback.
South Carolina's quarterback.
I do like that. He is, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He is 10th. He is 10th.
I totally forgot about Beck coming back.
Nope, it's not Carson. It's not Carson Beck. By the way, this is like, you heard my reaction earlier. I am surprised that he's this high. I have been a huge fan of this guy since the season kicked off, but I did not expect to see him there. Any last second guesses?
I do not have one.
I don't have one either.
Garrett Nussmeier at
You
LSU.
gotta be kidding me.
The Heisman Trophy favorite right now, according to FanDuel. Arch Manning and Cade Klubnik, along with Drew Aller and Nico Iamaleava, are hot on his tails. And then there is a gap before it jumps to Jeremiah Smith.
Which I find interesting because Ryan Day doesn't miss on quarterbacks outside of McCord. And it was just his first year, and he didn't really grow like you thought he was going to throughout those 12 games.
Yeah, that brings up a point that we kind of touched on earlier. The improbable nature of Ryan Day going from this is the worst coaching performance we have ever seen, which it was all season long against Michigan, to he just won 4 straight playoff games by at least 11 points.
Against good coaches.
Against great coaches and great teams. That turnaround is almost as improbable on paper as Kyle McCord goes from washed out Ohio State starter that wasn't good enough to the leading passer in the country. And then Ryan Day takes Will Howard, and we went through the numbers earlier, gives him not just the best season of his career, makes him a completely different player. A completely different player by the numbers. Those two things, you cannot overstate how unlikely one of them was to happen, let alone both. I mean, McCord at Syracuse tore it up. Yeah. He was so good. He had some turnovers, sure, but he was a completely different player. It would be very easy for people like the 3 of us to paint this negative narrative about Ryan Day as a result. Look at what's happened with Kyle McCord. He got better when he left Ryan Day. I mean, that's just a Skip Bayless line waiting to be spoken on the air. And yet, here we are. So things can look a certain way on paper, but you don't know until everything plays out, except Notre Dame in the playoff. I was 4-0 against the spread picking Notre Dame games this year. So in that instance, I knew.
I got a little trivia for you guys. I'm going to wrap up the show here.
I love trivia.
Henderson and Quinshon Judkins both went over 1,000 rushing yards this year. It happened in this game. When was the last time Ohio State had 2 running backs? No, 2 players rush for over 1,000 yards?
Oh, listen to that clarification there. 2 players. So you corrected yourself because it was wrong. That's what we call a Freudian slip. I'm going to go Curtis Samuel and JT Barrett.
No.
Dang it. I was really proud of that guess.
I was going to say Weber and Dobbins, but since you said 2 players, I think Spencer's right. Obviously, I'll say Dobbins and Fields.
No, it was Braxton Miller and Carlos Hyde in 2013.
Oh!
Man, love that team. Love that team. No reason to be good, and they refuse to.
Braxton Miller and Carlos Hyde.
Man.
2013 when they were so close.
By the way, guys, we've officially reached the meme status that flies around on Twitter of men will hang around and just name old sports guys.
Yes. It's a good day for
This after Vince,
Yeah.
guys, what do you expect during the show? I really appreciate Spencer and Jeff coming on here with us.
Man.
Follow Jeff on
I'm
Twitter.
gonna miss
at
this. I'm gonna miss this.
JHunt006. Spencer, Locked on College Football, Locked on Ducks, doing something the Buckeyes can do that the Ducks can't. I have to throw that in there at the very end, Spencer.
Wow.
But
Wow.
it
That
is-
was
it
so
is what it
nice
is.
the whole time.
That actually makes me feel bad.
Can't versus haven't. Those are two different things. They said Ryan Day couldn't.
I will 100% say after working with Spencer, I will not root against the Ducks. I'm being serious.
Yes. Now
I
I've done my job.
I love meeting good fans from across the country. I never really was negative on them anyway, but now I'm
No.
if I don't have a dog in the fight, go Ducks.
I'm right there with him, guys. Locked on Buckeyes, Locked on College Football, Locked on Ducks. We'll be covering the sports and the teams all
Everything.
week long. The show does not stop. It's football, 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 football every day of the week. Buckeye fans, go enjoy this. Go enjoy this win. Go buy you a shirt. Go buy you a hat. Go out, have fun. If you don't go to work tomorrow, that's between you and your boss. Don't say
Unless you
Jay
work
told
for
to
me,
call
please
off.
come to work tomorrow.
But for Jeff, Spencer, and me, Jay Stevens here, we're up out of here, guys. Enjoy this win, and as always, go Bucks.